80 square feet. Our PUD standards require 80 square feet. So typically when we look at a porch, we're going to go to our architectural standards manual, or we're going to go to Webster's dictionary and say, what is it? It could be covered, it could not be covered. But when you look at the elements or the illustrations in the plan, it's very clear on how it should be looked, or at least there's some things to consider when you're designing your home. So yes, is our policies left up to interpretation? Absolutely, because not every project needs to be the same. It needs to be unique. And so that's where when we say 30%, right, we don't have square footage. It has to be 30% of that facade. So whenever they come in with a design review application, they need to prove that up and show us. We don't say how much you need to provide, but we've had instances out there where applicants have come in and all they've provided is a stoop, to your point, Mayor, and it's like, that's not 30%. That's just letting you in the front door. That's not a porch. That is a stoop, and it's small.
But it could be even, again, if I go back to DC, row house is 25 feet wide. Entryway is about 8 to 9 feet, with probably at the top, you're probably you've got 30% in your entryway into your door with that top, because it's typically more than just a top step, but typically it does have a landing platform at the top. I'm just trying to get some context, again, what's envisioned versus what is practical in that context. And, I could redo this, but it looked like Washington, DC. And people may buy it, they may not. So that's why I'm not in the development world in that context. The only other question I had, just kind of going back to my first comment, and I didn't, the thing where staff told you, because part of me is like, take access off of Black Cat, cut off your access points and be a standalone subdivision that's not part of the 10-mile area specific plan. Because even for myself, I still feel like this is, while it's connected with pathways, does it feel integrated? Does it feel like it's part of the plan? I guess it's, and that's a subjective term, even to you or to the rest of the council, is does this feel like it's part of the 10-mile area specific plan, the way it's designed and networked?
Mayor, members of the council, you hit it spot on. That's why we're here tonight saying this is annexation and we don't feel it's the right time until we get something that does align and integrates with the rest of the area.
Well, and obviously I have different feelings about that, but I think you also have to ask yourself, which parts of the 10-mile plan are we satisfying, right? Because if we do what staff is indicating that they can't recommend approval on, unless we do what they say, we will be significantly below the density targets for the 10-mile plan. And the 10-mile plan is an area where you planned for density, you put utilities in planning for that density, right? So there's got to be a give and a take. And I would also just say that, what is the feel? We don't like alley loaded lots, right? We don't think that they're marketable, but we put those on the altar of the 10-mile plan by putting them right at the entry to our project, so that if, we're paying tribute to what the 10-mile plan was looking for, right? But we don't think that we can do that to any degree beyond this and still have a marketable project and still have a project that meets the 10-mile plan's density band. I mean, we've been criticized by staff in their report for not hitting 12, right? There's no way for us to hit 12 if we're going to do alley loads and porches.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Schrader.
Question for planning staff. Don't we have examples like renderings in the 10-mile specific area plan of, potential designs that do meet the standards? Do you have those available? Or could you speak to them?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, I have some that I've included in this report of what it could look like,
Right.
that I can show you on my presentation if you would like to see them.
Be super. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
So Mayor, Council, I do want to talk to a couple points that Heath had brought up, or the applicant's representative. on the block face. So if you had a chance to look at ACHD staff report, they've even said the block lengths are too long and they're requiring traffic calming to mitigate that. So their block face do not meet, they're measuring it wrong or interpreting code wrong. So in our code, it says block face and it's each side of the road and just not one side. So some of those block lengths are 900 to 1,000 feet long. So I just want to go on the record and clarify that, especially on that one block where they have the alley coming in and their open space, that whole north side of that roadway is 1,000 feet. So that's still considered a block face in our code. And ACHD, I believe, has required some traffic calming in there based on some of those things too. So I just wanted to go on record of that. The other thing that they could do, the other thing that we had talked about, and I know density, we can't say whether or not this won't meet the density requirements or not. We haven't seen a plan to truth that or verify that. We are leading that housing effort, and I know this applicant is part of that, and certainly there's different ways to get density. You can do that through townhomes, skinnier lots. You can have the perimeter lots, could be a detached garage in the back with an ADU above it for 2 units on one lot. There's different ways to make this work and still have density here in the plan and still integrate. It's just whether or not the applicant wants to do that. And those are the conversations that we keep having. And we realize they have a certain niche and they want a certain product for the community. But there are ways to achieve those things and still get density. And that's the other point I was going to make, is that's why when you look at the land use explanation in the plan, it speaks to higher residential style type homes, not necessarily single family homes. And that's why we felt it better aligned with an MDR designation and had recommended potentially going through a comp plan map amendment to change it. So we could support them in the effort of doing a different residential type, because we agree with the applicant. There may be a point where this area may be oversaturated with higher density residential. And I have to go on record to say I do support some more single family in this area because we don't have it. And so we were actually appreciative of the fact that the applicant removed the multifamily that they originally showed on the plan to get that density. So I don't want you to think that they hadn't tried to make attempts to try to add density and make it work, but at the end of the day, it came back to the same comments. It's the product type, it's the integration, it's do we need more multifamily? It's just a lot going on in this area. And I think Brian and even their interns were here in front of this body last year talking about the housing work balance in this area and giving you a progress report on the 10-mile area plan too, and sharing that with you, how well we were doing and grading ourselves against that plan, if I'm not mistaken. But again, don't want to belabor discussion too much, but again, it's annexation. We don't know if this is the right product type for this particular project. And to the mayor's point, it does seem like it's standalone, and we're trying to get them to integrate a little bit more.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I appreciate the flavor that you just gave us, and it looked like you had some renderings here available. I'll be honest, Heath, and where I'm coming from, and I think the struggle for me, so, we have expected everyone to try to adhere to the 10-mile specific area plan. And what I'm hearing from you, I don't totally buy that it's impossible for you to meet the plan. I feel like you don't want to meet the plan. You've tried, but it doesn't really fit your vision of what you think is marketable at this time. I'm not amenable to making an exception for this one development when we've been so strict about this plan and how it's been implemented. I don't think you're meeting the purpose and the intent of the plan. What I will throw you a bone on, though, is that the plan was written in 2007 and it's aged. I mean, it's old. So I do think it would make sense as part of a broader effort for us to revisit the 10-mile specific area plan holistically. And then at that time, maybe you could fit in better with what is updated. But this is the kind of thing where you start giving an exception to one developer, pretty soon there's no plan. Like that's my concern with it. So I felt like staff's analysis was largely correct. Now we could quibble about porches, but I thought they had a point, and I also felt like planning and zoning was correct in their deliberations. So I just want to be upfront, kind of where I'm coming from. I do think updating the plan makes sense, and then at that time, it would make more sense for you to come through, depending on the outcome of that. Or, working with staff again, but I understand you kind of been through the ringer on it, so.
We have. And Councilmember Schrader, I think it's a little bit, I think staff maybe overstated it when we said that the council has required strict compliance with the 10-mile plan. In every application, there have been modifications to the 10-mile plan, every one that I'm aware of.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
I've been here for a lot of the application of the 10-mile plan to specific properties. So I feel like I have a pretty good flavor for what the dimension of the exceptions were. And this, to me, like, I look at this holistically, and this does feel like a subdivision that would be anywhere in Meridian. It doesn't feel to me like it's integrated into the area at all. I'm with the mayor in the sense that, you know what, if we had some beautiful stoops and you had some townhomes, I might be convinced that that's close to a porch, right? But this, to me, looks just like a subdivision that could go anywhere in Meridian. It doesn't integrate into the area, doesn't provide that walkable, kind of almost non-vehicular, more pedestrian type of environment. That's where you're kind of losing me on it. And the block lengths thing, I think, is an issue. So anyway, I don't want to argue and debate. I'm just one person up here, but I just want to be upfront about kind of where I'm coming from.
Sure, and I do want to respond on the block length thing, because what Bill's describing is I think a technical read of code, not a response to the 10-mile plan itself, which says reduced block lengths. And we do think we have reduced block lengths, so I don't want to let that go. And obviously, when we're talking about a comprehensive plan, a lot of it's in the eye of the beholder. And so I understand if, Councilmember Strader, if you think that doesn't do it, we think that we have, we've done something at the entry of the project that we wouldn't have done if we weren't in the 10-mile plan. Like, there would be 0 alley loads in this if we were anywhere else in the city. And so, I think that's important, and I think the applicant should be given some credit for that.
Council, any additional questions for the applicant? This time, we'll give you a break.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. We'll see if there's anybody else who's signed up to testify on this item.
Mr. Mayor, nobody signed up.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience or online who would like to provide testimony on this item? If you're online, you can use the raise your hand feature, but we do have someone coming forward. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Lori Ballad, 192 West Lockhart Lane, Meridian, Idaho. I'm not privy to what the intent of the plan is. If you could explain the 10-mile plan, the intent.
Mr. Parsons?
What is the vision? Not of his, yours.
Well, he was here when it was developed, and not everyone up here was. And so I think it's best to hear from staff.
Oh,
On
staff.
the-
I thought you were asking the gentleman.
Yeah, no, staff.
Okay, sorry, my mistake. I just.
Yeah, it's complex, but the intent is that the 10-mile area was designed with a lot of stakeholders in mind for a specific vision where we realized at some point that Meridian would not have any more land to grow outward, and that we needed to preserve this area for a very specific purpose of almost creating our own little city within a city. Is probably the easiest way to describe it, where everything was connected through multimodal transportation needs. So you'd have bike lanes, pathways, interconnected roadways, transit. Everyone could live, work, and play in that same area. So we'd have enough jobs to where people wouldn't have to leave the area and impact the adjacent roadways. They would use the internal street systems to get back and forth to all the employment and the housing that would be provided in that area. So that is the vision for this. It's not meant for a suburban subdivision where you come home from working downtown Boise and being there 8 to 5 or sleeping there and then going off to your job. It was really meant to be a self-contained area where all services and employment would be contained in one area.
So in your opinion, you would prefer to have more townhomes, condominiums and such in that area? Is that correct?
Members of the council, it's all of the above, yes.
Just if I may comment to the builder, is that okay?
You just make comments to the council.
Okay,
Lisa?
so to the builder, I do live in an alley load and I love my alley load. There are ways to market it. for first-time buyers. First-time buyers are someone that could be interested, millennials and so forth, that are just putting together money where they need to come in. It's a lower cost. It's also good for seniors. We bought it so that we could retire and be able to travel because it's low maintenance. My next question is, what is the distance between the house and between the two houses is my question for the builder.
And typically, we don't do a back and forth. You can ask your
Oh, okay.
stuff and
I've
then
This is my first time.
they'll reply in their
Okay.
rebuttal comments.
Okay, so I'd like to know what the distance is between. We have 6 foot and it's not quite enough. It does seem quite crowded. However, we do have a room for the barbecue. We do have barbecue room and we do have place for the dogs. So the dog does have a place to go. So those aren't really issues. It does give a really nice look when you're coming in because one of the things that I live in a Brighton community. What I liked about it is that you do have all the tree lines and when you're walking and you feel community. On the other side, I do see the area with porches. Mine does not have a porch and I detest it. The neighbors go out, they want to be able to have community. I can't do that. And I did notice on some of the drawings, they did not have porches. It looked like they were just walk-up only. There is a difference between a walk-up and a porch. A walk-up is strictly a walk-up. A porch is where you're able to put a chair, I would assume. So, and that was, just wanted to make sure, like the tree line. I do understand with the precedent because once you do give that, but I know what I was going to say, last thing, I'm sorry. I was at the caucus, the Republican caucus, and I led the voter engagement booth. We had over 1,000 people that attended. In that, I did a survey for District 20, just for District 20, for everybody that went in. And on the bottom of the survey, we had a comment area of what was important to them. They gave us their name, their address, their info, everything else, and what their comment was. The fourth leading comment out of about 50 comments was growth and expansion. Most of the people are very unhappy with the growth and expansion that we are being led to. So unfortunately, I do like my alley load, but I do see what they're saying with having the single family available off the freeway. We need to keep that because people are very weary of the amount of people that are coming in and the density. They're very unhappy with that. And these are 4 out of 4 voters that are coming to the caucus. So these are very engaged voters that do not want the high density. They would prefer to have something like this. And the other thing is, how much money are they putting aside for schools? For every single buildings that have
Thank
come
you.
in.
Your times. If council would
Okay.
like to follow up on questions, we can do that.
Okay, so you can answer that, how much money they're putting aside for the schools.
I can answer. They, under state law, they're not required to
They're
do,
not.
no, that we don't have impact fees for schools. They're doing stuff for parks, police, and fire, but state law doesn't allow them to do it for schools.
So that was something we had in California. Okay.
Councils, any questions? Council Roberts.
Mr. Mayor, ma'am, excuse me, sorry,
Hey, this is-
my turn. Do you mind if I ask you when your home was built?
I moved in 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to answer her question in regards to setbacks for the R15 zoning district. It would be the same as hers, 6 feet in between houses.
Thank you. I think so. I don't see anyone else want to come up and testify unless council would like to ask ECHD any questions on Blockwood, since someone is here in the audience to get any resolution on that topic.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
happy always to hear from ACHD. Every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I did grab the staff report and it's one of the first conditions of approval that there are 5 proposed roadways within the development that exceed 750 feet in length. And so the condition of approval set by ACHD staff report is that they need to redesign the proposed roadways listed above to reduce the length or include passive design elements and submit a revised preliminary plat. So we do have something in there.
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
long night. So to satisfy, you just need a traffic calming measure on those roads to satisfy it? Or would they have to redesign the roadway?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, yes. I mean, the applicant would have to come to ACHD with a proposal. Some of those passive could be bulb outs, could be curvature in the road, could be something that doesn't make it a long, straight roadway. So they would have to bring something back to us for approval.
All right, thank you. All right, then with the applicant,
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff would like to clarify the amenities. There is a pool that is worth 6 points that was not included in that.
so we're close, but we're still not at the same number. Within a couple of points, yeah, it's,
Well, let me name on the record, right?
Yeah.
Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street. I would just say, and I say this with the greatest of love and affection for my staff member friends, we always have disagreements on the amenities and we always have agreements on the qualified open space every time. So I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. Okay, so Stacy, I'm gonna ask you to switch these, but before you do, I just want to point out the elevation that's in the middle, the white house that's right there. And I want you to just hold that in your mind. And then can you put up my slides? Okay. So I just want to point out how similar our alley loads look to that one. Another point that I want to make before I kind of do a little summary here, to Christie's point, when we're talking about block lengths, block length has a definition in the code. It's when you don't have something breaking it up, right? So, and we have, in this case, one of the challenges is that the property to the east is the apartment project that doesn't have a public street access into ours. So we're inherently going to have a long street over there. On the west, staff asked us to take our access out to Black Cat, right? So we are inherently going to have a long street over there. But the condition and the comment from ACHD is very typical, passive traffic calming, bulb outs, those sorts of things. That's not a difficult ask, it's a typical ask. And, we don't anticipate that creating any issues for us. Two more points. I think to our friend who testified, we looked that up, that is a gated community that's at 5 units to the acre. So it doesn't have the same constraints that we have when we're trying to hit the 8 to 15 unit density band. And then finally, before I get to my little summary here, I think it's important to emphasize this variety of housing types. And Bill himself said that, we don't have this product in the 10-mile plan, is currently missing. And so I don't think I misstated you there, Bill. And so I want you to keep that in mind. What we've tried to do here is to accommodate the 10-mile plan. Again, I don't want to repeat myself ad infinitum or ad nauseum or whatever you want to say. But, it's our position that Meridian homeowners want a backyard. But we have incorporated the 10-mile plan items. The only question is as to quantity. And we would ask you for your approval. And I think that approval, if we are so fortunate to get it, would be to approve the applications, but direct staff to come back with conditions of approval that are consistent with the plat, and I believe to do a development agreement. But with that, happy to answer any follow-up questions that the council might have.
thank you. Keith, did you have the map with the road network on in yours? I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Is this the one you were looking for?
Yeah, that was the one. And I don't want anyone to take any of my comments out of context, you know, obviously we all can see there's 5 people. Unless someone recuses themselves, I'm not voting in this issue tonight. But so I just want to be clear, at least in my comments, is like, I can understand why this could be treated as a standalone property. It is in the 10-mile area specific plan, but I could also see why we don't include it, you exclude it, you give them access off a Black Cat and you don't incorporate them. The reason why I asked for this map is kind of going back to my first point. This is really one of the only significant pieces of land that, of a single ownership that doesn't have a collector street that was driven through it to connect it into the 10-mile area specific plan. Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing that connects it, connects the plan, is you got to have a road that runs through it. But it does make it an outlier parcel in some regards to how it integrates. And that was kind of what my comments were. It was like, I feel like the way it was designed without the road network intertwined, it doesn't really feel like it's in there. And part of that's because you don't have a reason to incorporate it in the same way you do other parts of other pieces of property where you have to put a road and connection into this, where this one, like say, originally we were coming off of Black Cat. I don't even know if you had, what other connections you had, but Black Cat was your main entrance. And even that in and of itself doesn't make it feel like the rest of the project in some regards. I get it, 10-mile area specific plan, a lot of time, energy and effort. So, you know, it is a look, feel, desire of council when it comes down to it. But it's also kind of unique in this larger framework. It's not the last piece. But you know, if I'm trying to do the math in my head and looking at projects, I don't know that we have that many more residential properties that are going to be annexed into this plan. So Councilwoman Strader, about going back and looking at the plan, I don't know what that's going to gain us. It may just be for this parcel. Because the only other ones that I can think of off the top of my head, besides the one big project that will be coming through, you know, is really the stuff that's up off of Overland. That may be the last significant, and that's not significant in a lot of ways. It's somewhat disconnected from the rest of the plan by because it's right up against commercial up in that area. So I'm not really going anywhere with my comments. I'm going to say it's a unique parcel, unique challenge. I would love, honestly, and we're way past this, to say, what if we told you didn't have to do any garages? You didn't have to provide any garages. What could you do in the space to make it feel like a more walkable, friendly space where you don't have that dominated garage front in your parcels and you widen the street and let people park on the streets? That, to me, honestly, feels more like the 10-mile area specific plan intention, but I don't think we give people a pass on garages in the 10-mile area specific plan. So it's, on one hand, if you want that look and feel, you got to get rid of the other parts that people want. Honestly, I don't know anybody that doesn't want a garage in Idaho. If maybe they exist, but if they don't want a garage, they're not buying in this location, in my opinion. So I'm done pontificating, but that to me is like, you want something special, unique in this. Those are the types of things that you're going to have to really, in my opinion, go back to the drawing board, remove, come back and do something in order to get this amazing walkable, street lined, porch lined, brownstone or some other version. Okay, I'm done.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
we're at a point where we're probably, unless my fellow council members disagree, to close public testimony and move on to discussion and consideration of the application. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on, is it right? On file number H-2023-0049.
Second. Motion is second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
appreciate the effort to move things along. I'm going to vote against the motion, and I guess maybe a recommendation would be is that we actually leave the public hearing open, maybe as council deliberates, in case we need to invite the applicant back up for some further clarification.
Is there further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Bourne.
just for brief context, that's actually, we've done that, quite frankly. And if a council member objects, like Councilman Cavanagh has, I think it's well taken. If any of us think it should be left open, we're still going to have the discussion. So if I'd be inclined to withdraw my second, if you want to withdraw the motion, let's just have discussion, which gives us the opportunity to do what Councilman Cavanagh is saying, if necessary. We can close it after the discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
It's the same.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'm fine. I'd like to have the discussion
Yeah.
and provide some
Do that
input,
now.
so I'm fine with withdrawing my motion.
Withdrawn, second agrees. So without objection, it is withdrawn. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
so I'll kick off the discussion. There's a lot here, especially for a new guy. As I've tried to kind of dig into what is the biggest concern for me, I kind of keep going back to the design elements being a big hangup with what's being proposed, what the applicant wants to do, with what staff has provided guidance for. And I appreciate the staff being very strict in their interpretation of it. I think that's exactly what we've asked them to do, and I appreciate that. But I guess when I think about the 10-mile plan being put together in 2007, I think it's a very different time. It's 17 years ago. We've had housing bubble and crash. We've had COVID. We've had unexpected or unprecedented growth, I think is the right term. We last year just approved a record number of multifamily units, including, sounds like possibly 500 units immediately adjacent to this property. So I think allowing a plan that I consider very outdated now to sort of dictate today's decisions seems a little bit wrong. I think it would be, maybe to your point, maybe we're so far along, updating it maybe doesn't do us any benefit. I don't know. I'd have to spend more time thinking about it and looking at it, but that's a little bit troublesome to me that we would have a document that old to kind of decide what it is. I don't like to see a plan trump kind of zoning requirements that we do require them to abide by. But again, I do appreciate the staff being firm and being advocates of it, because that's exactly what we've asked them to do. I also want to make a comment. I think when we look at, as a city council, when we develop these plans, we get the public input, we kind of create this vision where we ask our partners to share that, and then we kind of put that forward so that those who wish to build and develop and build out this great city of ours have an idea what we want. I'm not putting any capital on the line. I'm not putting myself out there. We envision it. We help guide them in that process, but our friends in the development community are the ones who are actually making it happen. So I do think that we have to listen when we're provided some input as to what people want. I think they're more in tune than we are with what people want to buy. And when you consider the cost of land in 2007 and maybe what we envision, it's very different from today. My home was built in 2006. I think it was sold for $180,000. Pretty sure it's over $600,000 today if I wanted to sell it. But if you look at today's environment, it's really challenging. And I think anyone moving ahead with a project does so with a certain amount of reservation for that. You look at the interest rates we have, just the cost of acquiring the land, and then the inflationary costs that I've talked about from this seat multiple times in terms of what that would be. So in order to pencil out a project with all of those major obstacles is a daunting task and I think challenging. And so I think we should give some grace and consideration into modifications that seem to be reasonable. And I would think as we sit here and we're often told one of the biggest challenges we have is the cost of housing, and the cost of housing could be driving out families from Meridian. I don't want to find us in 20 years where we're in a situation where there's not a lot of kids and families around because we can't afford to live here. So when we're talking about bringing on, this many homes in this area, as it sounds like, as I've been gathering this information tonight, we don't have a lot of this here. And as I drive along the freeway, I've often looked out and thought, is this just going to be a massive development of apartments and commercial? I don't know. I know I wouldn't want to buy an apartment or a home next to 500 apartments. So I think good luck to the applicant in making that happen to some degree. So I think, again, I would be supportive of this for the reasons I've pretty obviously stated. I don't think it's appropriate that an outdated comprehensive plan dictates decisions made today when the conditions on the ground are so different from the vision we envisioned years ago. And if we want to change that, I think it would be a worthwhile policy discussion that we should undertake. But the truth is, we know that this area is probably going to develop pretty quickly. There's not a lot of areas in such prime locations to do that. I envision a lot of apartments being there, but I would like to, I understand the point being made of alley homes. I live in a community where there are some. I would never buy one because I have 4 kids. So I agree with that. But some people would like that. I think some people would prefer that. My mom would prefer that. She doesn't want a yard. So I get it. Not to suggest you're my mother, but but I think having product types that fit every kind of category is fine and is appropriate. So for those reasons, I am in favor of moving ahead with this application as it is. Although I recognize it puts us in a bit of a bind, and I think what Councilwoman Strader, her comments, I do consider seriously. Like if we allow this allowance, then the door is open for future ones, and so I recognize that. But again, I'm more troubled by the fact that an old, outdated, in my opinion, an old, outdated comprehensive plan seems to be trumping what's the reality on the ground today.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I'm happy to maybe kind of continue the conversation. And I share some of the similar thoughts as Councilmember Taylor, and I hopped on my Google machine during today's testimony, and I Googled the population of Meridian in 2007 when the 10-mile plan was implemented. And we're half the population in 2007 that we are today. And then I started to think a little bit more about what housing looked like in 2007. And it was largely, single family house, nice size house on a nice size lot, big backyard, big front yard. And I know at least part of the 10-mile plan was designed to really encourage a lot of housing diversity. And I think the 10-mile plan was largely put together to help encourage job creation and then provide housing for those jobs. The housing piece was certainly a big element, but I look back in 2007 and diverse housing was not near the level that it is today. And honestly, to Councilmember Taylor's comments about density and the testimony, frankly, from the one citizen who came today is, the applicant is in a really unique spot where they see a lot of what is called for in the 10-mile specific plan and our comprehensive plan. I think have tried really, really hard to meet that. At the same time, also trying to be sensitive to the feedback that they've heard, that we have heard as well, which is that there is likely right now too much multifamily in Meridian. And it's unique in that you've got this situation where the applicant has brought something where they likely could have brought something with greater density, and I would have been very vocally opposed. And so now they're in this situation where they're lower on their density range and have a recommended denial from our Planning and Zoning Commission staff, which as a council member really makes me open my eyes to this application. And we really need to be particular about, when you've got staff in your Planning and Zoning Commission that recommend denial, for me to look at this differently, I really want to make sure that I feel really confident in my decisions. Well, I don't necessarily know if it is outdated. I think what Councilmember Taylor is probably more speaking towards is taking into account more of what is happening in the real world today, as opposed to what was contemplated in a crystal ball, close to 18 years ago. So I I like most of this, not all of it. I tried to, and that was where some of my questions came early in the evening with staff, was about those design elements that they were looking for, that didn't receive, that is not included in this application that they had wanted to see. And the only thing that I can see that this application doesn't have, that what staff had talked about in other housing applications that are around the area, was townhomes. And so to me, that is not the nexus that I think this application should be required to overcome. Frankly, this is kind of unique in that a single family housing complex in relation to a lot of different job centers is unique. It is different than what we're seeing in that area. And so I think for that reason, I'm likely to be in support of this application this evening.
Thank you. And I will mention one more thing. I know I said shut up, but, and staff's heard me say this before, so, you know, I'm not the best example because I don't necessarily adhere to every parcel needs to meet every single element when you come into certain elements, like especially when we had this conversation when you're talking about mixed use, where one parcel can hit all elements and another parcel can hit the elements because it's the area, it's the comp plan designation, not development by development, parcel by parcel. I know that makes it hard to do projects, but I think it's the right way to look at these larger areas and saying, are they fulfilling the goal? Does every single annexation project need to have that element to it or not? Again, that's, you guys got to make the hard decisions on these things, but sometimes I know it can be difficult in the conversation with staff because I don't know, it's hard, for people to say, well, my development needs to have this when that one doesn't have it, or conversely, how do they work together to make that work? And sometimes that's what council does, is say, we got to bring them in together like we did up at Waltman to get the desired achieving of the comp plan or the city without it having to be on each individual application to have all the elements that everyone wants to have. So housing types in this case, if there's other housing types in the plan that help achieve the overall plan, maybe that's the right consideration. Maybe not.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Mr. Mayor, and fellow councilmen and staff, I would like to say thank you for your due diligence in trying very hard to do what we have tasked you with regarding the 10-mile plan. But to me, I think from what you just said, Mr. Mayor, substantially meets what we're looking for in that area. And I struggle a little bit with the alley-loaded homes because that is not something I would purchase. I'm a dog lover, and so I appreciate the fact that there's a dog park in there, but I also like to be able to open the door and let the dog out. So, so I'm tending toward leaning for approval because I think that when you look at the whole plan, even though it doesn't specifically meet what we have said in the 2007 plan, I think substantially it fits in that area.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Wharton.
The discussion is appreciated. I will miss this dearly. I think if there's a time to highlight the difficulty that comes from being on city council, we don't have it all the time, but this is the type of application where you've got subjective discretion, you've got conflicting recommendations from what an applicant wants versus what staff wants. This is the perfect storm of trying to exercise your individual discretion of what's right for the city. So I might understand where this thing's headed, but I'll give you just some brief background on, from my perspective, having been on council when the 10-mile plan was adopted. So it's old. It kind of tells me that maybe I am too. But some of the anecdotal things that inform my decision are the years and years of time when the 10-mile plan after it was passed, sat largely vacant, and there was such a great deal of lag. And we were concerned at times about, is it the plan that's holding everything back perhaps? And should you abandon the plan perhaps? Or should you adhere to it and allow the developed community and our community's needs meet it? It was a higher bar. It was designed to be a higher bar. And if you look at it now, I'm extremely proud of not only the good work of what happened. I remember all the charrettes in 2007 and 6, I think it was. It's a lot of good work. I don't think it's that outdated. So the older guy philosophy that gives me pause, first when staff who are subject matter experts in this, and they rarely make that kind of recommendation, it gives me pause, and P&Z's review certainly gives me pause to vet this and be focused attention on that discretion, and is it right for Meridian? So that's a starting spot for my review and for listening to the application. We've got an exceptional team in the back. You guys have done amazing work in Meridian. You know what you're doing. But you have highlighted that question that comes up at times is it the right time? Is this the right project, in the right spot at the right time? And my predecessors used to say that. Councilman Roundtree was famous for it. Dave Zarumba would say it. Mayor Tammy would say it. And every now and then that question fits. So then I think about the value of long-term planning and staying relatively consistent and diligent and disciplined. The fear that I've talked about before, maybe broader maybe than this application, is the risk of incremental change and item by item, a variance or a deviation from whether it's a long-term plan. This could be a financial plan. This can be a land use specific area plan. But boy, it takes a lot of energy and discipline to stay focused on that and think to yourself, I'm going to try and make a decision that is correct in 2035. And it might not feel good in 2024. For me, as again, maybe I'm being nostalgic because my time is short, but I get most proud of the long-term perspectives. So, and to be disciplined here. That being said, I think the 10-mile specific area plan is truly aspirational. I think what Heath's saying is correct about the discretionary role of those standards versus, code requirements. It's not designed. It's designed to put us in this exact situation where you've got to make difficult calls. It's not required that you have 47 alley loaded, not 46. We purposely left it to create flexibility. So the question amongst us as decision makers and exercise of our discretion, is this enough, right? What if it had 8? What if it had 6? 2, right? You could, maybe 1, right? So I don't fault the applicant for bringing what they presented. And I think it's a beautiful project and it's got so many great elements met. And I don't think, having said that, it's the right time. I think what's described is an attractive application that isn't ready for this location at this time. I appreciate staff standing strong and having the difficult conversations, making the recommendation, helping us make an informed decision, and maybe on the minority in this. But I'm going to finish up being kind of sturdy and focused on the long-term benefit of this 10-mile plan and follow staff and P&Z. I just think this attractive application is at the wrong time at this location.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Neary.
Mr. Mayor, I just, as the council contemplates what you'd like to do, I'd like to at least put on the record both for the, well, the no one that's watching online, but for the record itself, I mean, cities are required by code to create a comprehensive plan, and we have. And comprehensive plans may be in place for many years. The prior comprehensive plan to what we have now was in place for about 18 years. Now, in that 18 years, it was amended periodically for reasons similar to what was brought to you tonight. Didn't fit, the vision that was there wasn't really, was still the same vision, but this could fit it, and there was some alterations that were made to that comprehensive plan. A sub-plan is not significantly different. It's the same concept. You created a vision for an area, and this is an annexation. So you have free reign to deny it or approve it based on the vision that you or prior councils have envisioned for this area. So you don't have to adhere to the code. Whether it applies with the code isn't the only determining factor. It's whether it's the right fit for the city. And you were the only ones that could decide that. Staff, to their credit, and planning had said, if you don't think it fits the 10-mile vision, then do a comp plan amendment to come back and bring your vision, what you think should be altered from just making a slight change here and there, which is what they're proposing, to something maybe that's a little more significant. And that was an option they didn't choose to do. So it is within your authority to simply say it doesn't fit the vision you wanted. But I'd be cautious on either saying the 10-mile plan is somewhat outdated, because you will get applications from tomorrow on saying 10-mile doesn't apply anymore. And I don't think that's what you're saying tonight, but that's the message that may have been resonate with others, and planning will have to deal with that. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's still there. It's still required, or it's still a vision for this area, and you'll still have many applications to go, some of these parts. So if your decision is you want to approve it, if you think the 10-mile plan needs to be revisited, that's your call. If you think this fits the generalized vision with some alterations, that's your call. But please make that clear on what your intentions are, if that's what you'd like to do, and stay within the 10-mile plan. If you don't think it fits the vision of the 10-mile plan, that is completely within your discretion, because this is an annexation. You can simply deny it if you don't think it is the right fit or the right time for the city to annex this property. So all of those are within yours, but I didn't want that to get lost from a future conversation or as part of your motion. That, again, comprehensive plans can exist for many years, but when they get outdated, the process is to amend it. And that's what was proposed here, and that was what declined. So that's really the way it should work. If you don't think it fits anymore, well, then we should go and look at amending it. Again, you don't have to go through a full-scale process. We do those periodically on individual projects, and this was just one they didn't do that. So I just didn't want to get that lost in the rest of whatever your decision is.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe a bit on, and I guess I'm not totally alone, but, I think I had explained my reasoning pretty succinctly. This is the area where I think the 10-mile plan had the vision, and where it really speaks to me is this is the area that density is planned in the city. This is an employment center. It's near transportation. That was very intentional. I am probably harder than anybody on multifamily off of 2-lane roads that will never be widened. And so I have to leave space for higher density to go places like here. And that's just the philosophy I'm coming at it from. I don't want to see sprawl. I want to see the density focused intentionally in places like the 10-mile specific area plan, where that is very much contemplated. And so, I feel like it would be logically inconsistent for me to be so tough on these applications, for multifamily, but there needs to be a place for it in the city. And this is the type of place that it belongs. And so if I start allowing, subdivisions that look to me very similar to subdivisions that are all across the city, then, we're not going to get any more of this dirt back, so that there's an opportunity cost to that. And so that's where I'm coming from. I am a big process person as well. I believe in the consistency of backing up our staff and our planning and zoning commission in terms of having them adhere to a plan that's been very intentional. And I think if we feel like, hey, it's been a long time, I'm very open to us looking at the plan. And if we take a look at this area holistically and say, you know what, we overshot it and there's way too much multifamily compared to what we thought. Maybe there is a change that's needed in the plan. I'm open to those kinds of conversations on a policy level, but what I'm not open to is just giving a green light, because once we make these exceptions, get ready, the floodgates will open. You'll be making exceptions every week. That's just I'm a little harsh. That's my 2 cents. I think it's important to be consistent in our processes, and it's important to be strong to our long-term plans and be intentional about how we go about things. So if we feel like this plan needs to be updated, I think that's appropriate. I also appreciate that staff tried to direct the applicant toward that type of a process. I think that was the right recommendation.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
just real quick, maybe I'd like to correct the record. I don't think this was Councilmember Strader's intention, but those of us that are supportive of this application are not somehow not having our staff's back. This is a collaborative process, and we value the feedback from staff. And just because we disagree on one particular point here, I would hope that that wasn't your intent to infer that those that would vote affirmative of this application aren't supportive of staff. And so I thought that is an important point to make. Maybe I'm hearing it differently here in Phoenix, Arizona than it sounds in Meridian. But I just think that distinction is very, very important to make this evening.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Schrader.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to clarify. No, I didn't mean that at all. But I do just feel like their recommendations weigh heavily on all of us. I know that we all take those into account. And anytime, it's by its nature, anytime that we deviate from, I think, a staff recommendation, we should be really clear, I think, in articulating the reasoning so that we are supporting them in that process. So I would just encourage everybody who is in support to make sure to do that. And I know that you all will, and that will help support staff so that they could articulate, that reasoning going forward for other applicants.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
And I don't disagree with anything that's been said by anyone tonight. And I didn't take any comments to suggest that those of us who were looking to be generally supportive any other way with staff, I think they did exactly what we wanted them to do. And I think that's the right thing. But to Councilman President Borton's comments, we find ourselves at moments where as an elected official, you have to make a decision that I think the applicant was totally within their right and their ability to challenge some of the assumptions and to elevate that to us because we're accountable to the people. So I don't think it's in any way a reflection of how any of us feel about the Planning and Zoning Commission or about the good work that the staff does. I just think this is one of those unique situations where it kind of bubbles to the surface. And then as members of council, we get to make a hard decision where we bring in our discretion and bring in our opinions and we told people how we would view the world and how we would approach these decisions. And this is where we get to kind of express that, irrespective of the previous things that had occurred. So again, I think this is an interesting, challenging conversation for sure, because we're talking about some really significant decisions, not just for the applicant, but for what as a city we want to see one of these really last, big open areas and how we want to see that develop. So I'm certainly sensitive to that. And I don't think anyone suggests in any way that we don't appreciate the staff doing exactly what we wanted them to do, or to suggest planning and zoning maybe got it wrong. I just think it's one of those things that's kind of unique, and that's why we're in this situation.
Yeah. And if I could just add, and this is probably the perfect application for these comments, and I don't want to single out anybody specifically, but I've asked staff to give us their opinion. Much to maybe to some of the development community, they would not like your opinion. They would like your compliance in that element. I mean, we've had this conversation with this applicant. Sometimes that would be their preference, but we've asked for your opinion. Conversely, planning and zoning, we ask for does it comply? I've not asked for when I've done my interviews with them, I've not asked for their opinion on a value judgment. It has been, does it meet the intentions of the code and the policy? And I've tried to put them, at least the ones I've appointed, into that realm, into that mind frame. Because I say council is where the value decisions should be made. Outside of that, this is your purview on what is right for the community. And so to me, this processes work perfectly when it comes down to maybe not everyone liking or appreciating, or I don't want to say no one appreciates it, but yeah, everyone would like to have a yes from staff, a yes from planning and zoning, a yes from council on every project. But ultimately, this is like I said, a value judgment on an annexation for the council to determine, and planning and zoning, I think they got it right from their perspective when they looked at the, it's a little bit of value judgment in there as well for them, but their opinion, it maybe didn't comply with the standards that they felt under their reading of it. So great application for this wonderful conversation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I'm reading the room right, and we do need, you may want us to, staff would recommend if this is going in favor of an approval that we continue this item and then bring back some conditions of approval, because currently with the denial from staff and P&Z, there currently are no conditions of approval. So we'll need some time to work with the applicant and craft some of those up and bring them back for your review and approval, if that's your desire. I'm glad you left the public hearing open. Thank you.
Okay, and from that standpoint, timing, the 27th or the 2nd?
Council, Mayor, I think the later the better for us, probably first one in April. Give us some time. We got spring break next week. We're canceling city council hearing next week, and that's going to push some more hearings on the 26th. So things are backing up a little bit. So that gives us time to work with the applicant.
Does the second work with the applicant? Give us time to get that done and bring it back? Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
so it seems appropriate to, if I'm doing it correctly, make a motion for a continuance for file number H-2023-0049 to allow the applicant to work with the staff on a list of, forgetting the word, conditions of approval. Thank you. It's getting late. That would be my motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to continue this item to April 2nd. Is there further discussion? Further guidance from legal or otherwise?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no, only that though, with the hearing still open and the written conditions of approval, if all 6 council members are here, you haven't made a decision on what you're doing, on what this project is doing. So is that the intention, to consider it on April 2nd for a final decision with conditions of approval as an option to be able to move forward with an approval?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
I think that was my intention, was that we would vote on this, this applicant's proposal with the conditions being outlined. That's my intention with the motion.
Second concurs.
Is there further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I just want to understand, maybe I'm getting confused. Is the motion maker intending to approve in concept tonight with a continuance for the purposes of crafting a future development agreement, set of conditions for that? Is that, so kind of an up or down vote with those to come? Or were you, because I think if you leave it totally open, then other members of the council that are not here would vote on it. So I think that's what Mr. Neri was kind of trying to.
I'm open to being corrected on the right process here.
Let me save us a little bit of time. If another council member is here and would choose to vote no, I will respect the will of the council tonight and vote yes. So that is not a question mark. If that just, from that standpoint. Now, if people that are going to vote yes aren't here, I can't speak to that situation because I don't know that you're going to get the same agreement. So, but that's, I don't know what the other council member will choose to do, if they'll choose to participate or not participate. But
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
it's been the practice. You can make the motion now to take action, decide it, subject to the conditions of approval that would be brought back and formally approved on April 2nd. At least it gives the applicant some certainty, so there's nothing goes off the rails. I'm gone April 2nd. That's my last day, so
But you will be here on
I'll
April
be
2nd.
present. But, and which is fine. That doesn't matter for the practice has been that, and that'd be appropriate to do the same thing tonight.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I'm to clarify, so since I made the motion to make the motion correctly, that the motion would be to continue the public hearing.
I think we'd want to close the public
Or
hearing.
you do want to close the public hearing. I thought Councilman Cavanagh wanted to keep the public hearing open, so maybe I'm ahead of my skis.
Mr. Mayor, can I help?
Yes,
Help,
Mr.
please
Mayor.
help.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, so what I've heard the council say, I think you should leave the public hearing open because you're going to need findings that are going to have to be approved. You haven't seen them yet. So just to be, in case there is a discussion about any of the findings. But I think, Councilmember, I think what we're trying to do, Councilmember Taylor, is you want to move to approve the project tonight with, set over till April 2nd for the findings to come back and then that opportunity to review. So they can always be rescinded on April 2nd if there is a problem with the findings, but you will be able to hear them because the hearing will still be open. But you won't be voting on approving or denying it on April 2nd at this juncture.
So, Mr. Mayor, so we would be voting on the applicant tonight, subject to the conditions that we will be receiving on April 2nd. I would be supportive of that.
Second concurs.
Okay, so we have a path. This is a new one on me. I don't know that we've ever not approved a project without closing the public hearing, essentially, without taking another vote. But if it's legal, it's legal. So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, and
Councilman Borton.
it's only open for the purpose of receiving the conditions, not for members of the public or the applicant's not making a presentation. So it's,
Yeah, I apologize for making that clear. It's
Yeah.
not for further testimony. It's to
Right.
be able to receive the findings. And since we don't have them to discuss, we want to make sure that the council has a full opportunity to discuss the findings only.
All right, further discussion? Not clerk, call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Bill Roberts.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Strader.
No.
Borton.
no.
3 ayes, 2 noes, and the item is agreed to, and it's continued to come back on April 2nd. With that, we'll move on to item 5, which is ordinance number 24-2048. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to Crowley Park subdivision H 2023-0053, annexing a parcel of land lying in a portion of the northwest quarter of Section 10, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, City of Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, more particularly described in Exhibit A, rezoning 1.13 acres of such real property from R1 Estate Residential to R8 Medium Density Residential Zoning District, directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps as well as the official zoning maps and all official maps depicting the boundaries and the zoning districts of the city of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
for motion that we approve ordinance number 24-2048.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 24-2048. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts. Taylor. Strader.
Aye.
Borton.
All ayes, motion carries, and the ordinance is agreed to. Council, anything on our future meeting topics? Or do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.